Welcome back to All Angles. Now, were you woken up by your house and furniture shaking and wondering if it's just a dream? No, it wasn't. It was actually an earth tremor that was felt in parts of the province around 6:30 this morning. It measured a 3.6 on the Richter scale. The Council for Geoscience has confirmed the earth tremor was felt in Boksburg, Northcliffe and Germiston, among other areas. Let's talk about this further with Michelle Grobbelaar, Seismology Unit Manager at the Council of Geoscience. Thank you very much for your time here on ENCA. Now, I don't live in any part of the city or the province where I felt this tremor, so I was quite surprised when I saw the news that it happened. But can you just explain to us what causes such things to happen?
Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. So really, an earthquake is caused by stresses that just build up inside the earth, and just like normal stresses, they need to be released. It just bottles up so much that it just has to get released, and it usually finds a weakness in the rock along which that energy can get released, that stress can get released, and that sudden release of that stress, of that energy, is what we feel is what makes an earthquake, is what shakes the actual earth and the foundations.
Do we know where the epicenter is for this specific tremor?
Yes, it's around about it's Boksburg. There is obviously, whenever we locate an event, there's always a bit of an error in our locations. So what we often ask the public to do is to complete our online questionnaires, which give us a much better indication of where it occurred. It helps us to narrow it down a bit more, and also to get an idea of how people experienced it.
So 3.6 on the Richter scale, is that big enough for us to expect aftershocks?
There usually are aftershocks, but very seldom it'll be a definition of an aftershock is events of smaller magnitudes. So should there be aftershocks, there will be of smaller magnitude, and it's very unlikely. I mean, obviously, if you're above the epicenter, you might feel it, but it's unlikely that people will feel that unless, of course, it's very close to that 3.6. So those aftershocks will probably continue, but even though our seismic equipment will be able to monitor it, it's usually people don't feel the smaller events.
So are some areas more susceptible than others?
To earthquakes, yes. You do often, yes. Well, you often find that. I mean, you can just look at it on a global scale. That, of course, your Japan and other areas, you know, on the states and everything, on the coast of the states. So some of those are the typical areas which get the big earthquakes. And even within South Africa, even though we're a stable continent and we have low to moderate seismicity, there are certain hotspots, if you'd like to call it that, where one can expect seismicity, where they've occurred. There's been seismicity in the past, and a general rule of thumb is that if you've had earthquakes in the past, you're bound to have earthquakes in the future in that same area. So there are definitely areas where we've noticed in the past that there's been seismicity, and Boksburg is one of the regions or the areas where we've had seismicity in the past.
Now, we've seen this, and like you're saying, you've seen seismicity in areas like Boksburg, and we've started reading more news, actually, in the past few years, at least, of earthquakes or tremors happening around South Africa. I remember one particular one in the northwest where people's homes were actually, people actually lost their homes. It seems like it's happening more and more. Am I right in saying that? Especially in Africa, where we used to, show off about not getting these types of events happening in our country or in our continent, but it seems to be happening more. So does this have to do with, for instance, maybe global warming, or am I wrong in thinking that it's happening more?
Well, that's actually a question that's come up often, especially on the international scale. Us seismologists have discussed that because you're not the first person asking. For instance, myself and other seismologists as well across the world, and we've looked into it, and we realized there's no evidence to show that the seismicity is increasing. What we realize is that it's just our means of communication, of sharing information and sharing news has just improved. And that's what we've seen. So people are able to spread the news easily, to send messages across, to explain it, to say that they've felt it, did you feel it, etc. And it carries on like that. So that's what we've noticed. We haven't noticed an increase in seismicity. What we've also noticed, of course, there's more people. The populations are denser in particular areas, so then more people do experience it eventually, basically. So that's what we've noticed. We haven't noticed that increase in seismicity once we've looked at it.